Good afternoon, everyone. It is 3:46, and today is the October 24, 2022 meeting of the Westport Commission on Disability. I'm Brian Gallagher. I am the chairman, and we have several of the commissioners with us, but not quite all. One is on her way, and one is going to try to call us, and so we can have remote participation with him. So the first order of business is to approve the minutes of our prior meeting. Did everybody see the minutes that I sent around?
Yes.
Are there any suggested changes or additions?
No.
Not for me either.
Then-
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
Is there a second? All in favor of approving minutes, say aye. Aye. The minutes of the prior meeting are approved. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the lowered level to this building,
Yeah.
which had been broken up for so many years. Well, after a lot of effort, it finally got fixed. There's now a concrete pad there, so that people, particularly now that voting season is upon us, can get in and out of the building with ease, or easier than it used to be. There is a ramp inside, and there is a railing, and the railing needed some repair, and Dana Stewart, the recreation director, said that she would see to that. Now, I don't know if that's been done or not. Do you know anything more, Martin?
I don't know anything more.
Okay, well, we'll follow up with Dana just to make sure that that is done before Election Day.
I'll take care of that.
The next item on the agenda is water access, and we have a guest speaker with us today, who, do you want us to wait for Sue to come, or do you want to just come up and? Okay, well, then why not come up and join us and tell us what ideas you have for the, sure.
Oh, looks like Ray's connecting. Hey Ray, how are you?
Hi, Ray.
Hello Ray.
So we're at the water access part of the agenda, and we have a guest speaker with us who has an idea for how to improve water access at the Hicks Bridge Landing. So why don't you go ahead and.
So, hello, my name is Michael Mosier. I'm a Life Scout from Troop 100 of Westport. I was originally from Troop 63. Unfortunately, they have broken up since then. I'm here today to find an Eagle Scout project for myself, as one of the many requirements to accomplish Eagle rank in scouting is I have to have some sort of big community service project that I must develop and accomplish myself. So I came here today to hopefully find that project. I have several ideas on goals that I would like to accomplish. I just want to help local residents in Westport. I want to have something to do with access to the water. I do a lot of riverside stuff and boating and going to the beach with my family and friends. And I have some handicapped friends. It's just something related to disability, and something on the waterfront is something I would really like to accomplish. So project ideas I have is like an accessibility chair lift on the boat ramp to help people with disabilities to get in and out of their boats on the dock. Another idea I have was like a canoe or a kayak kind of ramp, or like a taco kind of thing, where like people can help themselves in and out of the water on like a canoe or a kayak. Someone who have disabilities. Beach and dock accessibility mats, so people in like wheelchairs and stuff can easily approach to the docks and get in their boats and whatever they need to do. And special rescue equipment for first responders in case someone, God forbid, fell in the water and needed some sort of first aid or rescue or something like that. There's equipment already there for first responders to help them out of the water. And that's just several of my ideas. I just came today to see if you guys would be interested in any of those ideas, and if you wanted to do.
Michael, one of the things that we have discussed is how to get in and out of watercraft at the Hicksbridge Landing. And a lift would be particularly helpful. Right now, they're in the process of trying to fix the Hicksbridge and update the Hicksbridge Landing. And it's a process, and we have with us Mr. Bull, who has been intimately involved in that process and how far along it is. My question is to you, do you have to get your project completed by your 18th birthday?
I do. I have, that is the time frame I have is my 18th birthday. I will be 17 come February 6th. So
Okay.
I have a little over a year to get this done.
Okay. Now, the Hicksbridge Landing project, from my understanding, is going to be a process where we have begun the process. I don't know if it will be done in time for you, but one of the things we want to do is have a rampway installed and new floats, because the floats that are there now might be too old or too high. And have new floats and have a ramp to the float and then have the lift maybe on that float. One of the questions comes to mind is, even if we're able to get that all accomplished by the time before you turn 18, what do you have in mind in terms of maintaining that lift or preserving that lift?
So there are certain requirements is that the BSA has established is scouts, once they complete an eco project, if it needs to be maintained, it can't be from me after I turn 18. I'm not required to maintain my project. I have to have someone from the town be able to maintain it.
Okay.
It's,
Okay. That could be problematic, and particularly as things go. And the lifts, from my own experience, can be either manual or electric, and either one might be difficult to leave out, and so then it would have to be brought in or stored somehow. Mr. Bull is somebody that you might want to get in touch with in terms of other projects that you might be able to pursue in terms of projects around town, water access projects, and that sort of thing. I don't know, Jeff, do you have anything that you might want to
Well, just to
add?
fill you guys in on Hicksbridge and you, we did get the $90,000 of state funding to do just the design and engineering of building a new boat ramp, making the parking lot more handicap accessible and resilient to rising sea levels, and also more environmentally friendly, because right now, when it rains hard, the parking lot top washes into the river, fills up the river. And so we have awarded the design and engineering contract. That will take 6 to 9 months to complete, the design part of it. Be happy to have your interest and input in that. The company is very aware of ADA requirements and where ADA access makes sense and doesn't make sense. I know that's an awkward thing to say at a disability meeting, but I worked in the disability world for 21 years actually, and it makes sense to spend your money where it's most likely to be used. And I know the town had a handicap wheelchair for the beaches.
Still does.
It may still be there.
It's
It is
downstairs in
yeah.
the town hall.
Right.
Yeah, and that could be used and has never been used because it's so complicated
That's
to
right.
use it. So it's important in the design phase to figure out something and to figure out, does anybody wanna go in there? And I know when we've talked at these meetings before, we've sort of targeted the head landing as a better handicap access point than Hicksbridge, a lot for safety issues as far as getting in and out of canoes and kayaks. So that's certainly something we can talk about, and we're looking at developing some additional property, which I would like your input on, and perhaps a letter to the select board, where there's actually a town-owned green space on the west side of Hicks Bridge looking north. It's a beautiful spot. There could be handicap parking there, a handicapped picnic bench. You can roll over there and have a family picnic. It is about the most accessible place in this town because it's flat. Parking's a little bit iffy, but it's not impossible. And it's effectively no expense to the town. The planning commission would pay for the picnic bench. It's something that you could certainly be involved in. We had also spoken about purchasing equipment to easily transfer from a wheelchair into a kayak or a canoe and storing that equipment in the enclosure that we built at the head. You may have seen that there's, where the porta-john is, there's a fenced enclosure there. That's oversized, so that would include this big wheelie thing that's been designed to make it easy for someone to transfer from a wheelchair into a canoe or kayak and then roll them right into the water and then roll them back out. And there was interest 2 years ago with Osprey Sea Kayak in that because they were even doing events for handicap vets. We haven't followed through on that. They have backed off a little bit in terms of their interest, but that's certainly a possibility, although I'm not sure exactly what your input would be on that. But there are other things. The other thing we've looked at for anyone, particularly a handicapped person, the wonderful cement blocks that we built what we call a slipway, because it's not a boat ramp, into the water at Hicks Bridge. 3 years later, really slippery. People are falling and getting injured as they pull their kayaks in, even just walking up and down that ramp. It is unbelievably slippery, even though you're walking on cement blocks that have cavities in them. So certainly something that would help anybody would be a nice looking railing there to, so that as you lift yourself out of a kayak, you've got something to hold on to as you walk up and down that. And I think that's something the Land Commission would be open to if it was attractive and all that. I mean, that's something you could definitely do. There's no maintenance cost. We've also looked at possibilities of some sort of rollout textured something or other that people could walk on because the blocks are so slippery. The problem with that is you have to roll it out and then roll it back, and it gets slippery because the Osprey Sea Kayak put that in. So we're also looking at maybe putting in metal bars so there would be ridges. So it would certainly be something that we would research and work with us on. So I think there are definitely some easy projects there. And the other reality is we're not clear in the existing handicap population in town how many people actually want to get into a kayak.
Right.
And we kind of, our idea a year or two ago was we wanted them at the head where at least there was some supervision from the kayak store so that if there was a problem, we could get to them quickly. It's a mixed issue because the harbor master is really tooled up with a jet ski to get there quickly. So it's a mixed bag. It's not perfect, but I know the idea of putting a lift in. There was a big ADA plan that was developed now 16 years ago for all the landings, and I would just say those things they're problematic because it's not clear how much they'll get used, and then will they be adequately maintained, and then what do you do with them? But the engineering company is very sophisticated about these things, and they are looking to make it as for anyone. But you know, we have an elder population. I'm 73, my back hurts. I don't qualify for a hangar yet, but it's not easy for me to get in and out of a boat now. easier than a lift because we won't get the $300,000 to $600,000 to fix Hicks Bridge for at least 3 or 4 years. So
Jeff, that slipway you mentioned, that's at Hicks Bridge?
the slippery slipway,
Yeah,
no, that's the head.
that's at the head, okay.
Right, that's the head. I mean, it's mud on one side of the river,
Yep.
and then it's these nice kind of hexagonal
Oh, it's like a
blocks.
cement geogrid thing, because we had looked at that, I think, when we were
Yes.
talking about the geogrids. Okay.
That's on the
On the
east side, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about, slippery, those geo?
Yeah, you
blocks?
think those would be great.
Yes,
They're awful.
really?
But it turns out all cement is awful.
Yeah.
Even the boat ramp at Hicks Bridge, it's just rough cement.
Yeah.
It gets slippery, and it's a problem. So a railing there might be great. And I'll give you my contact information if you have some production. That's something you could definitely do.
Yeah, definitely. I like that idea very much. If all else fails.
Yeah, and I would do it so that it's sort of up at standing height, and then there's one kind of at wheelchair height too.
Yeah, I can have 2 different railings there.
And you gotta consider the tides too for that, so.
Pardon me?
Tides,
Consider the tides, what kind of, when tides come in, high tide, low tide.
so having 2 levels would be helpful because at
Alright.
low tide you'd want one level and at high tide another. Well, Michael, we applaud your interest and, Yes,
Yeah, Michael, thank you.
I do
Thank you.
encourage you to get in touch with Mr. Bull, because he has some good ideas and ways that you can help. It does not look like the lift would be a workable idea, at least not in your timeframe. So there are other things that you can and maybe should pursue. So, good for you. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Oh, and before I finish, years ago, I worked with a retired judge, a wonderful man, and he always told me that whenever a young person came and applied for a clerkship with him, if they were an Eagle Scout, he automatically gave them an interview. So I encourage you to get your Eagle Scout because it will help you no matter what you decide to do.
It'll look great on your resume for sure. So, I know that at Hicks Bridge, the time frame probably isn't gonna work for whatever you decide. But I did like your idea of providing rescue equipment. Maybe that's possible somewhere else, or?
Yeah?
And Michael, before you go, I told you my name is Martin Costa. And you know that I walk on a couple of canes. I have short leg braces from a spinal cord injury. I'm one of the people that has been in a kayak, but has had to have 2 or 3 people help me get in and out. Not at the head landing. I actually went to Dartmouth. I forget what near the Duval store there where there's a, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I'd be one that would be very interested in something like that, but I haven't gone because I gotta get my friends together, and go through all that trouble. So if there was something that made it a little bit easier for someone, to get in and out, I think we would see more disabled people use it, and I'd be glad to be a person to help you, try to decide those of us who are more able-bodied to be able to walk, but also those who are in a wheelchair. We have to work with all kinds of disabilities.
Right.
And like Jeff said also, it's not only a disability, it could be an elderly person that needs that extra railing to hold on to and to get in and out of, But I think it's a great idea. I highly suggest that the head landing more so than, the Hicks Bridge, because it's already there. If we can come up with something to work there and you get the kayak place there, we could talk to them to see if they'd be interested in getting more involved. It would be great.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you.
We applaud your efforts.
I have my contact info here. I can pass it around.
Good.
It's just for BSA requirements. I have to have an adult for youth protection to be CC'd in any other conversations you do contact me. So I have my mother and my father's phone number here as well. So if you need
Sure.
that.
And Michael, I apologize for being late. I got
Thank
caught
you.
up with patient care, but, this is certainly a young
Thanks,
man, I
Mike.
think we all can agree, who is a great asset to an up-and-coming Westport. This is our future, and so thank you for wanting to do something for the Council on Disabilities, and we applaud you, and we're here to help you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And your mom for
Yes.
dragging you
Yeah.
around.
Well, thanks,
That's right.
Bob.
Good.
I'll wait.
I'll be.
Thank you very much.
This is the minutes.
the next item on the agenda is, we're still on water access. Just wanted to touch base about where we stand at the end of season with Children's Beach and Beach Avenue. Children's Beach, with the mobility mats, is the highway department gonna take those in, or?
They already took them in.
Okay, and they're gonna store
From
them?
my understanding, Chris told me that. I haven't now get to see it, but I'm sure they have.
Okay,
And they're gonna store them over at the highway department.
great,
I'm assuming they'll put them down for us next year as well, but I'll make sure.
terrific. And at Beach Avenue, it's been decided by the highway department to wait until the springtime, is that right?
That's correct. So,
Okay.
you know, we all talked about doing it this fall,
Yeah.
because last spring they said they'd do it, and then it didn't get pushed off again. But now both Sean Leach and Chris Gonzalez from the highway department really suggest that we hold off, because he said, you know, there could be winter storms, it's gonna pull that thing back up again, and there'll be more work to do. I said, you know, I just pushed on, and I said, listen, we really wanna get this done in the spring, so you're gonna hear from me, you know, so I'll make sure we get it done in March, before the lightning plover situation comes up. I mean,
Just lean on them in February, because once bird season starts,
agreed,
you gotta
early.
push on February, because
It's April 1st, is right, is when the plover season starts?
I don't know when it starts, but I know they get busy plowing roads and everything else.
That's right.
You wanna get on the schedule, so you wanna start knocking on their door.
Yeah, and if you,
I'll be sure.
Martin, if you happen to talk to Chris about anything else anytime soon, just remind him to have the GeoGrid project on his
Yeah.
list of things to do, towards the top of that list of things to do.
I see him often, so I'll make sure I do that, yep, for sure.
Great. Anybody have anything else that they want to discuss with respect to water access issues? The next item that I have on the agenda is the sidewalks in town. There is a section in the requirements for the town planning board that addresses the need to put in sidewalks on one side of the street if there are more than 20 houses there. Now, we have talked about this, and we have discussed ways to do what we can to change that. There have been several planning board meetings that Martin has gone to, and they kept saying to him, or they did say to him at one point, we need to have a public hearing. So, well, there was a planning board meeting a week ago, Martin,
Yeah, it was a week ago, Tuesday.
that Martin and I went to, hoping that that would be the public hearing, and it turns out they were very, very kind and gracious and listened. And I made the pitch that we would like to see that section of the planning board requirements changed from 20 houses to 5. Whenever a developer puts in 5 houses, a sidewalk on one side of the street would be required to improve the safety of handicapped, disabled people in that development, and to enhance the sense of community. People are more apt to get together if they're not afraid to go out in the street to get back and forth. As I said, the planning board seemed very receptive to the idea. Some even thought that changing that particular paragraph from 20 to 5 was a good idea. But there's always a caveat in public service. There has to be a public hearing, and that has to be advertised. So Amy Messier of the planning board said that she would take care of doing that, and she emailed to myself and to Martin a copy of the proposed notice. I got back to her, said the notice looks fine, and then I got another email today saying the notice was gonna be posted, the hearing's gonna be November 15th. And there is gonna be a charge because it has to go in the newspaper. And I advised her that our commission, out of our funds, or or handicap parking account would pay for the charge from the newspaper for posting that notice. And she got back and said, that's great. So that notice is gonna go in, it had to go in with a certain time frame in order to have the hearing in November. So if you can make it on November 15 at 6:15 in this room, please come and show your support for changing that. It is kind of tight in here, and particularly for those of us who use adaptive devices, trying to get back and forth. But Val very generously moved the camera for me because I couldn't get the wheelchair up to the table. But you know, if we get here and show our support for changing it, I anticipate that some developers in town might not want to see that change. But in my mind, it's a good thing to do, and it's a cost that the developer can either absorb or pass along to his ultimate consumer. So,
If I may, Brian, that all got started because Chris Gonzalez brought to my attention that there was a development on Joanne Way, I believe, off of Old County Road, where 10 houses went in, so no sidewalks were necessary, and then a year later, the contractor went back with 10. You know, so there's kind of like a loophole, so we're trying to button up that loophole so that we can at least have one side of the street with a sidewalk in new developments.
and I expressed my own personal feeling that when you're in a wheelchair and you have to get from one house to the other and there's not a sidewalk, you have to go out into the street. And that creates a bit of a hazard. And if there's a car parked there, you have to go further out into the street. And if you're in a wheelchair, you don't have rear view mirrors, so if you hear something coming behind you, it creates anxiety. And I imagine the same is true for people who are on crutches and canes.
We have real issues down at the point where there are sidewalks, one of the few places in town that's had them, but people leave their trash barrels out, or people park on the sidewalk, or the sidewalk is just so busted up that my daughter's wheelchair gets stuck, and we're often in the road. And it's,
Dangerous.
at least people aren't flying so much down there, but.
It's scary though.
You know, I heard the same thing from Pran, the guy who's in charge of that. He said the gentleman owns the Star convenience store in Sanford Road, which also has sidewalks. And he says he has a customer that can only make it so far because the sidewalks are so messy. That this customer who's in a wheelchair calls him and says, "Can you meet me and bring me some goods?" I mean, that's ridiculous. You know,
But he does.
He does. I'm saying they're so nice to him, but the person cannot make it to the convenience store and get their own goods independently without having to work something out. because
With
of
a
the
sidewalk that's there.
I'm sorry?
With a
With the
sidewalk
sidewalks
that's
that's
already
there.
there.
Yeah, but they've never been maintained. They're so narrow and
Yeah.
busted up, as you said. So I think it's a good, a good thing to really be
Yeah.
on top of.
So if you can make it, anybody, November 15, it's supposed to start at 6:15. I advise getting here early. It might be an interesting topic for a lot of people. The next item that I have on the agenda is discriminatory practices in medical offices. Martin alerted me to an article in the Boston Globe. And then after he talked to me about it, then I started thinking about my own doctor's office. When I go to the doctor's office, there's a scale, and there's one grab bar, and they look at me and say, "Well, can you get up on the scale?"
That's unbelievable.
And I look at them and say, "You've got to be kidding me. I haven't been able to get up on a scale in years." And then they don't have an alternative. They don't have a scale where you can roll on with your wheelchair. And
Those do exist.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we've used them for my daughter before up in Boston.
And some doctors actually don't want to take disabled patients because they feel it might be a liability for them. They don't know how to deal with them. They don't have the bedside manner to handle someone who's got a disability. So they decide not to take them on as patients. So.
I've gotten a lot of flack for using my Segway, even in Mass General and Spalding. The people at the desk there yelled at me,
Really?
told me
Really?
to get off.
Yeah.
Yep, even after I explained to them, they still were combative. It's really disturbing.
No kidding.
sometimes. But I have, Department of Justice ADA guideline that specifically shows a Segway being used anywhere in public. It's my civil right. I tell them that, and usually, eventually, that message gets through, but not always. It's like, I have fewer problems with that in this area since I've been using it for a while, and people seem to have gotten the message mostly. But other places, it's still, but I was surprised, Mass General and Spalding Rehab Hospital both had people
Wow.
who.
They don't have.
No, they had people who accosted me and told me to get off. And
At
were
Mass
rude
Re,
about it.
at Spalding?
Mhm.
I just think it's an issue that we should be really aware of. I wasn't, because I walk on Canes, and so I don't even think about that fact that there's not a way station there or whatever. And there's also the thought that if you have to get up on the exam table, who's gonna transfer you up there, whatever. So you don't really get full care that way, and I just think that it's kind of, it hasn't really been brought up, and it really should be.
No, I had to go to a doctor's office and I wanted to perform an ultrasound and they said, all right, get up onto the exam table. So we had to take two men with us, neighbors and a friend, to help get me out of the chair and up onto the exam table
Wow. There's
so
an
that they
example.
could do the ultrasound.
Why?
Okay.
So I'm embarrassed. You know, as a healthcare provider, it's sickening to hear. And I apologize that this, you know, occurs. I know it occurs
Yes.
in healthcare, but I'm appalled. So certainly I can try to do something, if we can think of something that I can do at South Coast to try to, you know, improve the education and the understanding, but that just sounds to me to be so ridiculous. You know, to me, I work in rehab, so I'm a rehab manager for South Coast, and so obviously at our level, we are fully adapted, and
Right, right.
patients can
Right.
completely access at any level of mobility. And in my building, I work in the Brain and Spine Center, and I know that I have had times where physicians have called me from upstairs in neurosurgery and pain management and asked us, you know, can you help us transfer somebody? So we go up and help transfer a patient, and then I follow that up with, we're doing an education for all your medical assistants, because this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
any medical assistant in any facility, anywhere, should know how to transfer a patient. I mean, that's just basic. If you know how to take a temperature and you know how to
Right,
take a
right.
blood pressure, you should know how to be able to transfer.
Yeah.
Now, certainly there are certain complicated situations,
Sure.
somebody that's vented or, you know,
Mhm.
somebody with lots of lines that they may be a little bit anxious to have to transfer, but really, I'm embarrassed and I do apologize on behalf of the medical
The
society.
Brain and
It shouldn't
Spine
happen.
Center is great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but, I left South Coast for my primary care because they had 15-minute appointments, the doctor's transcribing things.
I'm sorry.
And it's not enough for me.
Right.
Some of my issues were just
Right,
not even addressed.
right, but that's something that you know, every patient comes in and you have a set amount of time.
Yeah.
But you also know that, you know, I have an hour for a patient to do an evaluation, but there are some patients that I need longer. So I know
Right.
the next time, I have to say, I'm gonna adjust and I'm gonna keep this guy in for an hour and a half, because I can't deal with it all at one time. So, you know, that really should be taken care of. So how do we improve
Well,
this?
I also
How
think
do
that
we
this
improve
happens,
education?
this happens a lot more than we know about, because most people, a lot of disabled
Don't say.
persons don't say anything, or don't know what their rights are,
Mhm.
and they just deal with it best they can. I think we should start off with education. I think we should have sort of a forum and discuss this, that, you know, bring this to the forefront, that it's an issue that we'd like to see addressed. I can't see why a doctor's office, whoever, can't have some of these adaptive equipment available. At least a scale, my goodness, that's crazy, you know? So I'd like to see that happen, Sue, if we could, you know,
Yeah, let me
Get together and
get together with some,
see-
let me
see.
think about some people from South Coast that we can, primary care, practice manager I know well, and let me see if I can't get her, we'll figure it out, whether we have her attend a forum, or whether we have her call in,
Sure.
or we
Yeah.
figure out something that we can do. All right, and let me put some brain thought into this and come back to the
I
next
think it's
meeting
great.
with some
Well,
ideas.
thank you.
I think it's great that, we do things for the town of Westport, but we also have to look a little bit further out, it's still for the town of Westport, it's for the residents here, but the wider disabled community that's having this kind of problem that nobody's really addressing.
Mhm.
I was shocked when I read this in the Boston Globe, and they were talking about some of the doctors just feel like disabled people are paying the butt, and they just don't take them on as patients because it's too much.
And they
I know
talk-
my own personal experience too, that I've had to tell, whenever I've gone to the hospital, because they're not all educated on spinal cord injury, and you can't expect them to know everything, but you have to educate them to tell them what I need, because they don't know what to do with a disabled, with a spinal cord injured person. You know what I'm trying to say?
I
That the
do,
person needs to
but-
be turned, or they need certain type of support on their legs when they're in bed so they don't flop over,
Right,
these-
But that's basic,
You
that's
think that
something-
should be included? Yeah, they should know that? Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, they don't.
that's makes me very sad, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to say, Mass General and Spalding are better about those.
Sure, because they deal with,
Right.
because of their line of work, with heavy trauma patients, but, South Coast just became a level 2 trauma center. So difference between a level 2 and a level 1 is just that we don't have, are tied into an education system, so we don't have residencies. But otherwise, we treat all level of injury.
Yeah,
So we would be treating active spinal cord patients from car accident to the ED, to surgery, to rehab, et cetera. So this is something that I can certainly work on and
That'd be
see what we
great.
can do.
that'd be great, Sue.
Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't say, but I got the whole title.
You're welcome to
Do you
take
know
that,
the date
take
of
that.
the pull
I'm sorry I didn't put it down. It probably was about a month ago.
Okay.
Brian, if you could, a second, while we're still talking about this, because it kind of ties in, as you
Sure.
can see, I'm a prolific reader. I cut out all my articles from the newspaper. One of them, I just wanted, just make a comment, we don't have to make any action on it, but one of the opinion pieces was ableism is on the ballot, because as you probably know, the Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman had a stroke, and Dr. Oz, of all people, is kind of picking on him that he can't, speak properly and so forth, and the fact that we should be aware of this, that, any disabled person should be able to do what most able-bodied people can do and have the same opportunities, and you still see the discrimination come about, that, if somebody stumbles on a word, even President Biden, you stumble on a word because of stuttering, that all of a sudden you're not capable, you can't think properly, your IQ is lower and so forth and so on, so I thought that was an interesting topic, and to see how people will react to that fact, whether they want to vote for somebody who has a disability or not, although there are plenty of folks who've been in Congress with disabilities. And the last one, subject that always surprises me is one here, this mass residents, again out of the Boston Globe, mass residents with disabilities file suit over living options. They say they are unnecessarily put in nursing homes. I thought that all stopped. It just amazes me that, a lot of times that they may not have, they can't afford their own housing, there's not any type of disability housing options for them, and so they get thrown into a nursing home. And I think that's, you remember my friend who spoke to us, he had that problem. The gentleman was speaking about, trying to get some housing done and so forth, Ed Walsh. He was mentioning that when he was first injured, that they really wanted to put him into a nursing home because they had no place to put him. And once you get in there, sometimes you're forgotten in there, and if you don't have the advocacy ability, it becomes a real issue. So there's just a lot of big issues that we have to, even though we have the ADA and we think we're so far ahead, there's still all these cracks in the foundation and the floor where people fall through.
And as we know, the ADA was a great tool, but there was no enforcement mechanism included in the statute. So if there's an issue, it's left to private individuals to file suit to try to enforce a provision of the ADA that's been violated.
So I want just to read the first paragraph on that so you guys know what I'm talking about. It says, 6 Massachusetts residents with disabilities who say they've been unnecessarily institutionalized in nursing facilities for prolonged periods filed a class action lawsuit in federal court calling for the state to expand its residential program so they and others with disabilities can return to living in a community setting. But really sad, I mean, that, you know, you have to go through that, they gotta sue the state to say, you know, when I've stayed an extended period of time in a nursing facility for rehab, they won't let me out, that kind of deal, we have no place to put them. So, keep that in mind, just some,
And sometimes when people are put into nursing homes, they're not local to where their families live.
I'm sorry, Brian, say it again. We
They're,
get interrupted down here by a barking dog, but,
it's okay. I love dogs, so, it's all right.
Yeah, it's my husband.
go ahead.
Oh, okay.
He's a dog?
That's his phone or anything, make his ringtone a barking dog.
And sometimes when people are placed into nursing homes, if, for example, if they're a Medicaid recipient, that nursing home might be miles or hours away from where the family is. You know, that person who needs to be placed, they're placed wherever there's an open bed.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Having been on the other side of that, I have to say, it's hard, because you have to find a safe place for someone to go. That you can't return them back to their third floor apartment.
Right.
They don't have any, you know, family member that's stepping up to say, sure, they can come stay with me,
That's right.
or they don't have the resources to fix up a place for them to live, so it's really is tough. You're very limited as to where are you gonna house someone, that they can get care, and I'm not saying that what happened to these patients, these people is by any means appropriate, but I have to say, sometimes short-term care nursing home is the place you have to go. At least you get a roof over people's heads,
Right,
and they're in
true.
a safe place, and they're getting care that they need. It should be a stepping stone.
Right,
to,
right,
you know,
right,
being
not a
to-
final
to-
destination, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
but there is very limited
That's right.
opportunities for affordable housing, as we all know,
Yeah.
in this country, not only in
Yeah,
our
no.
town or in the state,
And not just for persons with disabilities.
and with anybody,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
It's a shame, it
and
really is.
a lot of the housing in this area, Fall River, New Bedford, they're 3-floor walk-ups.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they don't have elevators, so. And we did have a discussion months ago about the money that's available from the state. If people want to rehab their homes, make the doors wider, put in ramps, put in grab bars. So that avenue is available if someone needs to renovate a living space.
Mhm.
But, I don't think it would really help someone who's up on the third floor of a 3-floor
Right.
walk-up.
Yeah,
Sure.
I have a spinal cord injury, gentleman right now that was injured in a work-related accident. And, he and his family have been moved to a hotel,
Wow.
because he can't access his home. He doesn't have the funds to access his home. We have given him, you know, lots of resources to try to help him out, but it's a tough road right now of, you know, where is he gonna live? Nothing's affordable.
Right.
His
Right,
family
that's the
doesn't
thing.
wanna move out of a certain area of
Right.
New Bedford.
And that's why we need more people like Martin's friend, who are trying to build
Right,
Build these places,
places
really
where-
important, yeah.
that are accessible.
yeah, it's hard. I struggle with him on a weekly basis, you know, and having him, and he gets tired and he gets sick, so it's, did you follow up with this phone call, did you follow up with this phone call, and I couldn't because, you know, I didn't feel well for 3 days, right, you know.
Oh,
It's a tough
it
situation.
is a tough situation.
It doesn't mean we don't keep trying.
No. It's a bigger goal, like, you know, the housing or whatever, but it's something that we should attempt to pursue,
I agree.
whenever we have the opportunity.
The next thing on the agenda is the status of this commission's donations. Now, I asked our town accountant what our current status is, and I got a printout from her of the amount of money that we have in our parking fine account currently. That's $17,549.36. And Martin tried to find out what the status was of our donation, which was just supposed to be bookkeeping transfer from our account to the recreation department account. And when Martin checked just the other day, that transfer had not yet been made.
And the
But,
reason was, I haven't got to it yet.
you know, any day
So
now.
maybe short-staffed, I don't know what's going on over there, but she knows that we wanna, you know, I'm talking about Nicole in the accounting office, that we wanna get that, transferred over as soon as possible.
And-
We started this in August, so it's too bad because, you know, we get the GeoGrid money quicker than we did just transfer from one department to the other. So I let her know that, you know, that we thought she might have needed some more information, you know, we were waiting for something from us, and she said, no, I just haven't had a chance to get to it, so I said, okay. Well,
And she has been very helpful to us, and I'm sure she, like
Oh, no,
most
no,
people
yeah.
in town, are up to their eyeballs in
Yeah.
alligators.
Yeah,
But, so, it's still in the works, and people are aware of it, and, Dana will eventually get that money for the recreation department. Now, we have also committed with the select board approval, $5,000 to the Hicks Bridge landing project. Down the road, we might wanna consider donating some more money to that project. As it goes forward, I have asked Mr. Bull to keep us advised of where that project stands, and he has promised to let us know if in the future there is a need for more money from our commission. So, Jeff?
Just about that quickly, like a lot of other construction projects, the cost of rebuilding a boat ramp has doubled, truly doubled in the last 4 years. And so, we do not need any additional funds right now. I mean, the $5,000 will be important, but when we go to get the big money to actually do it, it will be important, I think, to be able to leverage some of your contacts and potentially use some of your money to go after much bigger grant money. Because the town will have to come up with matching funds to build the new boat ramp, to do the parking lot, the floats and all that. It'll be $500,000 to $800,000, which means the town has to come up with at least $100,000 to $200,000 of matching money. And so certainly we'll be going after grant money to do that. And you know, and so your assistance in going after that grant money will be helpful, and potentially use some of your money as matching funds to just show this is something the town cares about. Will be important. The other project that I mentioned to the young man about opening up this new sort of handicap accessible west side of Hicks Bridge, we've got plenty of money. That'll be cheap. So it's basically putting up a couple of signs, moving a couple of rocks, and buying a picnic bench. I have seen people use the picnic bench, handicap folks, at the head, because it's one, they call it the king seat or something.
Yep.
So you can kind of roll in the end of it.
Yep.
yeah.
Something like that good to do again.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any need for Moby mats. I think you can roll on grass usually, right? I mean, it's mowed regularly. So I don't think there'll be any particular expense.
Parking there could be the issue.
Well,
Yeah.
there'll be a handicap, there'll be a spot, there'll be a sign for
Okay.
the lead spot will be handicapped.
Yeah, and it's a pretty spot. You can look right at the water. You're very close to the river right there, and
Right. And you can't get, I mean, nobody, unless you're a rock climber, can get down into the boat, but that's not the intention at this point. And we wanna do it before the Army Corps of Engineers comes along in 2 to 5 years or never to do the dredging, because we want it to look nice, be used that way, so that then for 6 months, they will take over that site and effectively destroy it. And then I want it brought back to this
Right.
standard.
Right.
So that's part of why I want to establish the use now, so that there's a standard that they have to come back to. Assuming that ever happens.
And I did try the wheelchair accessible table at the head,
Yep.
and it was nice. It was easy to get in and to get the wheelchair under, and I could sit with, you know, my wife and just watch the river flow by. So having that kind of table at the Hicks Bridge site would be nice. Just so long as somebody can get their chair to it.
Right.
Parking.
It's, I think Jeff makes a good point about, you know, what is really gonna get used by the disabled community. And I don't know how we can go about that. For example, I think that when Ross put in the all-access trail over at the Westport Woods, a lot of people have used that, you know, again, seniors as well, people with mobility issues as well as those who are disabled. I think it's a great project. I think it'll get used a lot. It offers a lot. Whether a bunch of people do a canoe, you know, a lift or a boat lift, like I said, that remains to be seen. And would you wanna go through all that money and all that work to find out one person once a year uses it or something like that? How can we do that though? Can we do like a survey, or can we, you know, to find out what people would really take part in if it was available?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. You could sign up for a free, SurveyMonkey account. We've got the website, on the town website that we could use for that. We could also just regularly publish our own articles on that site, ask the town to link to them from the front page of the town site. So when you go, you can see here's resources available, you know, accessible locations in town. And, maybe get that picked up in Shorelines as well.
The transfer equipment, to be able to transfer a little kayak or something at the head, that's relatively cheap. It's like $800-900. And it's effectively no maintenance, just put away at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then lock it up when it's not being used. So then it's really just a matter of getting cooperation about who's gonna keep the key. So that, but probably that will occur through the kayak shop.
I would think so.
The only problem with that is they're not open that many days a week, so, you know, actually, maybe we could do like one of those little realtor boxes.
Yeah.
You know, you put the key
Oh,
right
yeah,
there.
the lockbox.
And then somehow a handicapped person wants access, they get in touch with you, you tell them that it's HP 1233
Right.
or whatever the combination is,
Yeah,
they can get in.
yeah, that's a good idea.
That would work. So I think the reality is, I mean, unless somebody's like a Navy SEAL or somebody, and there are those people out there. I saw a guy in Hawaii once, it was like unbelievable what he was doing going into the water. Realistically, I mean, I don't go in the water unless I'm with somebody, and so you sort of wanna have a second person there anyhow.
Right.
So I think it's more realistic to have equipment that includes a second person. So we can certainly pursue that. I can look up those resources and get back in touch with you about this. It's basically a transfer bench,
Be great.
and then it's kind of a big wheel cradle for the kayak. So you kind of transfer the person on the cement ramp,
Mm-hmm.
and then the kayak is sitting inside this trailer thing, and then you just like roll them in the water. And
Was it, the kayak was like a V? Was the trailer thing kinda like a V? Cause one of the things that Michael and I looked at
Mhm.
was that, when he was talking about that taco, was really kinda cool. It was a V
Mhm.
that had rollers up and down on both sides.
Mhm.
And then it had like these stairs made out of wood on either side, and then it had a plastic transfer bench. So you would roll up, transfer from your chair to the bench, slide across, slide into the kayak, and then you used your paddle
Right.
on the steps, and you pulled yourself
That's very cool.
in to the water, and when you're coming out, you got your nose into the V and you use the paddle to pull yourself back up the hill. It was really interesting, because if you're kayaking or canoeing, you have to have enough upper body and core control
Anyway.
to be able to do that anyway, because you're not out there if you're, a C3 here.
With issues of tide, you base, those things that you're talking about, they will break the lake. As soon as you have tide.
Okay, gotcha, yeah.
So again, and this stuff is relatively lightweight, I mean, the fixtures weigh maybe 15, 18 pounds and just roll them around.
Oh, that's
And
really
we've
cool.
got that enclosure there that's designed for it. We just sort of, like a lot of things, kind of didn't happen.
Right.
But if it was there, and I know in past years, Osprey Sea Kayak was interested in advertising events
Sure.
for handicap.
Yeah, that's good. They were great,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great.
Well, there's new ownership.
Yeah, yeah.
Even the new guy said he wanted to do it,
Yeah.
so, and they're tooled up with a van and stuff too, so, I don't know if it's a wheelchair accessible van, but,
Cool.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, put a lockbox and have the police have the code, or the fire department have the code, or us have, and
I
they
think
can contact
calling
a
one of us,
million
you know?
people,
Yeah.
get the code.
I think it would be good, given the number of resources that have increased in recent years, we should put together an asset list, even if it's just on our site, within the town website, listing all of the accessible options available to town members. So like the beach accessible chair that's
Mhm.
gathering
Right,
dust in the
right.
town
Mhm.
hall, plus which beaches have mobility mats,
Mhm.
how many handicap parking spots are available at each place. It's not just, ironically, Cherry Web has the handicap spots, but then you have to
Right, and then you have to walk.
traverse.
Wow.
But how many are at Children's Beach? How many are at Beach Avenue? Which mobility mats are there? What carts are there? If we put things down at the head, what's available there? Who to contact, if
Yeah.
any?
The
I
big
don't
one
think
chair
we
was,
have it.
was the transportation of it, wasn't it? I mean, you gotta get that big chair with those big wheels down to the beach. Who's gonna break down that?
Oh, the beach,
The beach, well, what do they call
the,
it?
the,
The one that gets you into gets a handicapped person into the
Yeah.
water. It's a
The deal
huge-
was you call the beach committee, or you get in touch with the
lifeguards used to bring
on
it.
that particular day, when
Right.
they go to take the truck down, they go get it, and then,
There's quite a bit of
but you
coordination.
still have to get yourself
It's a-
over the mountain. to get
It's
to
a
the
long
beach.
way.
Yeah, I, used it several times when I was at the school,
Oh, you did?
with kids when we do field trips to the beach.
That's
And
great.
we'd, put kids in it, and that was, as I was the school PT, so,
Cool.
um,
Oh, good.
we used
Going
to,
to Cherry
use it a
Web?
lot. Yeah, yeah, so
That's
we'd
great.
bring it, and, we just coordinate it with, I'd have the school,
When you see
Yeah,
video,
it's
what do you
really
mean, put it
good.
back of a pickup truck or how'd you get it? Oh, yeah?
yeah, the
It
school,
fit in there and
yeah,
everything?
the,
Okay.
one of the school, and what I would do is the school department, one of the maintenance guys would go get it and bring it, and, we would just load it into the van, and then when we got to the beach, we'd pull it out, put the kid on the beach, and push it in.
Good.
It was fun.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it got used.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's been a lot of years now.
And Jeff's point is a good one. If someone's disabled, that wheelchair can't really be used at Cherry and Webb because you have to get from the parking lot up and over and down.
Right.
But perhaps at Children's Beach,
Yes.
it might be easier.
It's not self-driven either. It's,
Right. No,
you
right,
had to
right.
push it.
Yeah,
Right.
So, you had to have somebody that
Sure.
was strong enough to be able to push you
right.
in it.
But
and-
at least you could park in a handicap spot and get yourself to the beach, however means you're gonna do it, whether you use your own wheelchair or your crutches. And then get yourself into that wheelchair that will go into the water, so you don't have to,
Mhm.
make a real long trip to get,
Right.
because that is no longer doable for me, or someone
Yeah,
who
many
has
people.
a,
Yeah, it's been a long
Disability.
time. I mean,
Rick, I think the idea though is really important because a lot of folks in town who may have disability don't know that these things are
Right.
available, right?
Yep.
yep,
Or who to
It's-
ask,
it's-
or where to go.
Right, it's not advertised. Another thing that I brought up to Brian, which seems to be a real problem, I get calls often from the Veterans, Carol, from the Veterans Department over here, asking if I know if anybody who's got a ramp, that somebody has come out of a veteran has come out of the hospital, is in his house, has to get out to go to a doctor's appointment, and just can't get a ramp. So of course, if you have to pay for it, it's $3,000 or $4,000, they don't really rent them. So I was wondering if that was something we could think about. I was telling Rick it would be great, not Rick, I'm sorry, I was telling Brian to put some money toward purchasing one so it was available if somebody asked for it, but then how do you get it over there? You know what I mean, it can be big, you've gotta have the proper, 1 to 10, 10
it
inch,
would-
right?
1 to 12.
1 to 12,
Incline, yeah.
so it depends on how many stairs are at this person's porch and so forth, but this has been maybe the 4th time I've been asked about, do you know where I can get a ramp?
It
And,
would be nice if we had one that we could access and rent. I mean, we could keep it
Yeah,
and
I agree.
allow people to borrow it for.
you showed me a picture of that one time, do you remember a ramp that was for sale on
Yep.
Facebook Marketplace?
Yeah.
Probably wasn't expensive,
No,
but,
that one wasn't.
but then the logistics come up, how do
Wait
you?
a minute.
The logistics and the liability,
Siting,
and who's gonna keep it in their garage.
Right.
every site is different too, every house is
Yeah.
different.
Right.
But my thought was that if you wanna get rid of liability and all, we just have it available so somebody can take it themselves. We don't-
Kinda like
we
the
don't put it
town
together.
nurse has wheelchair,
Right,
they have standard travel chairs, they have, commodes, they have
yeah, so this is, the council on
bench
aging, yeah.
top chairs and things that they have on a loan basis.
I think, one of the parts of that may help would be, again, just in terms of awareness of what's available, making families in town aware that there's a opportunity to donate that
Good point.
when they're through with it, because I think oftentimes the house then becomes vacant. They renovate to sell or to move on from the house, the ramp gets discarded
That's
or
right.
sent somewhere
That's
else.
right.
If they had a place that they could, donate that, even if there was a vendor we could, or a list of vendors that can install the ramp, we could almost be matchmakers, just, like you said, the Council on Aging has so many different accessible,
Yeah, they have a
options.
ton of stuff.
Maybe it's something similar but for ramps.
And, and maybe we can just offer ourselves as the contact if you have a ramp and say,
Yeah.
who,
Yeah.
do you know somebody who might need one, or,
Right.
so, you might be the middle person to help.
Does the Council on Aging, does anyone know if the Council on Aging has like an inventory of what they have, or is their things change all the time?
Well, my own personal experience
Mhm.
recently, I needed to get a different manual wheelchair, one I can get up and down the ramp in my van. So I called the Council on Aging here, and this is maybe the second time I called them about stuff. And they put me through to a person who was responsible, and that person knew exactly what they had, what they didn't have. And unfortunately, they didn't have what I needed, nor did the Council on Aging in Dartmouth. But there is someone who is aware at the Council on Aging here in town of what they have to lend to people, to families.
Well, that's good. I think people probably go that route. If somebody comes home that just had a stroke or, total hip or something, I think the first thing a family probably thinks of is, call the Council on Aging.
Right, right.
I don't think they think to call us.
Well, that's
Right.
what a lot of the doctors and everything say too. It's like, oh, this is new to you. I remember my father when he needed physical therapy, and I said, okay, you contact your local Council on Aging. They may have a walker, wheelchair.
Yeah, when people get to that point where they no longer need it, they do try to donate it to places like the Council on Aging. So there is that source available too, which we should also highlight in the list that we prepare about what we know that we have done, but people we know or organizations we know that you can contact for help. So. All right, we're at we're at the penultimate item on the agenda, our next meeting. Well, the November falls right around the time of the holiday, and December also falls right around the time of the holiday.
Funny, same thing happened last year.
Yeah,
Seems to
That's
happen
true.
every year.
so,
Yes.
what my personal thought was, we don't meet in November, rather than try to juggle a new date somewhere in that month. And we don't meet in December. You know, we're all gonna be in that jovial holiday mood and out shopping for Christmas presents and on Thanksgiving looking for the food to make and stuff. So, my recommendation is our next meeting be January 23 of 2023.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree,
Yes.
I don't think there's anything really pressing. I will say this, I think we should keep an eye on that transfer of the $5,000 to the recreation department. I'll volunteer to keep an eye on that, so that,
Okay.
in other words, within another month, I'll talk to Dana if she hasn't got it yet.
Yep, and if not, you know, either you or I,
Yes.
and we'll contact Nicole and just say, you know,
Yeah,
what's the status of it?
yeah. What can we do to expedite
Yep.
this?
Okay,
Because I think that's probably the most important issue right now in these next 2 months, that we have to deal with, so.
And if I get any information from South Coast about anything, I will just shoot it out
Yeah,
in
yeah.
a group email and see what I can't
I'm
dig
re-
up with.
Really interested in that, so.
Yeah,
Let me know if I can do
I am
anything
sure
help
I'll see
help
what
you with
I
that,
can
in
do.
any way, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, are you ready to close up here? I have one more thing. Are you
yeah,
going
go
to-
ahead, Mark.
Are you going to the comments part there?
No, we don't have,
Next meeting, oh, you jumped over comments.
no, we didn't have.
No, I just wanna let you guys know that, I was really pleased that, Richard Vera, you know, Mr. Vera was a selectman in, not Richard, Tony Vera, was a selectman in town. I know Richard too, his brother. But anyway, called me because he's a member of the AMVETS on Sanford Road, and I was not aware that that is owned by the town. Well, I guess they pay $1 for it, you know, a year or whatever, they rent it, whatever, but it's owned by the town, but it's not handicap accessible, which I thought was interesting, so we kinda missed that building. But they're going to get CPC money and other kinds of money, and they're going to make it handicap accessible, especially for the veterans. A lot of their members are elderly and so forth, so he asked me if I'd come by and, you know, give some suggestions of what they can do and so forth and so on.
VFW on Route 6 is not handicapped accessible either.
Well, now, he said that they have a lift there in the front, but
Oh,
hardly ever works.
Okay.
So I thought that might be interesting to just check with them. I know you can go downstairs where the bar is, correct? I
Yeah,
haven't been there in a long
there's
time.
stairs.
There are?
Mhm.
I see, and I don't know if that's town owned or not, so I don't know if they own that themselves, so.
Well, because I play trivia or something.
But they're gonna do quite a bit of renovations, over at the AMVET, so I was, you know, pleased to hear that. And,
Good.
I told him we're available if he needs any, information, any help. They were just concerned about, having like a unisex handicap bathroom available, and, I suggested, you know, with the door, he didn't think of when you're first going downstairs, for example, to put a automatic door there as well. I said, it's just so much easier for somebody in a wheelchair, you know. But they're gonna put a ramp right in the front door as well. It's gonna be quite a bit of work they're gonna do, so that more folks can use the upstairs. I hardly ever been up there. Have you? There's like a stage area there, and
I don't know if
a
I've
lot of
ever
things
been
could
in
be,
that building.
it's amazing. Downstairs is where they meet. Most of the time, it's just, there was a kitchen area there, and they have a lot of tables and so forth, so they have their meetings downstairs, but upstairs is where, all the action is, so to speak, and, so they wanna make that accessible for those persons, who are disabled.
Downstairs is where they used to do the election as a polling.
That's right, he
place, too.
mentioned that. He
Yeah,
mentioned
so
that.
that used to be my polling place before they moved to Our Lady of Grace.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they don't use that anymore, correct?
No, they've
Yeah.
been using the rec center at Our Lady of Grace the last couple of elections. The COVID, more room to spread out.
Do you need to vote to send a letter of support to the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board,
Yeah.
to open up that West Hicks Bridge lookout with some handicap parking? I think that might help push things along, just the more support we have. So I don't know if that's something you need to vote here, or whether in the next 4 weeks somebody can just pen a letter on your stationery and send it to them.
Yes. We don't normally vote on it, but we do send letters, obviously, well, you know, that's a good idea, and it is a good idea,
I can
so,
work with Brian on the wording and stuff.
okay.
Does anybody have an objection to sending a letter on our letterhead asking them to, include handicap parking at that site?
Right, and just basically to make it, I mean, it's crazy, town owns it, town mows it, nobody uses it, so it's just lunatic.
Well, it says no parking, doesn't it?
That's one of the big things is we have to go before Concom, there's a bunch of trees along the road that have grown up, So there's not a lot of visibility moving west, coming across the bridge. So as people are leaving the parallel parking, what we want to do is take down all those shrubs and trees so that you can, someone across the bridge can see that you're pulling out into traffic.
Right.
and parking
Right,
places.
right.
And it will be probably Hicksbridge permit parking. Because one of the unfortunate realities in town is town in general is resistant to the Hicksbridge being used by people who don't live in town.
Yep.
So one of the ways that can be limited would be to, it's like $10 or $20 for a permit or something.
For the landing,
Pardon me?
for a landing permit?
For, yeah, the Hicksbridge land, it would be the same permit that they use for the landing, right? And so one of the things to think about is, if you have a handicap placard, do you also have to have a permit, like at
Right.
Beach Ave,
Right.
do you have to have a permit and a handicap placard?
You have to have the handicap placard, and I think you have to have the beach.
That's what they
Permit.
say. However, state laws say that if you have a placard, you can park in any handicap spot.
Really?
Mhm.
Right, so if it were me, I'd leave it open to that possibility myself. I don't think there'll be that many people from out of town
Right,
with a handicap placard that will know about it.
right.
It's not like it's gonna, and if, if someone's abusing the handicap piece, it's a $300 fine.
That's right.
And I was checking the Shorelines newspaper throughout the summer to see if our parking enforcement officer had issued tickets, and fortunately, tickets were issued, which is why we now have more money in our handicap parking account. People don't care. They'd rather pay the money and spend the day at the beach until they get the thing in the paper, in the mail saying, is now $300. I think like, oh, that was an expensive day at the beach.
That is expensive each
But we
day.
thank them for their donation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank them for their thoughtlessness.
Right.
Is there anything else anybody has as we approach our wrap-up time? All right, then may I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor of adjourning and going home? Aye. All right, we are adjourned.